Hi, it's John from positiveresolution.co.uk and welcome to episode 8 of the Business Growth Weekly. As usual, I'm joined by my good friend Stephen Swift. Hi Steve, how are you doing?
Hi, John. Yeah, I'm doing really well, thank you. How's things been for you?
Yeah, not so bad. It's been a bit of a hectic week and a bit of a roller coaster, but overall pretty good. How about yourself?
Excellent. Yes, can't complain at all. Busy, busy. So, got some new business coming in and some more meetings for people looking to gain a bit more exposure and help with their advertising and marketing with the business. So, it's all going well, thank you. So, can't complain.
Fantastic. Excellent. That's good. Well, we could, but it wouldn't do us any good, would it?
Absolutely. No one ever listens.
No, absolutely not. No. I've got a cat, he doesn't even listen. He, he just ends up in the other room.
I've
He's
got
off
two
again.
kids like
He's off,
that.
he's off again. I'm going.
Dear.
So this week,
So,
this week,
well,
well, I ought to explain to people that about 5 minutes before we press record on this, we changed the topic for the week.
just
So,
it's on our toes.
so this is even more live than it would normally be. This week we've decided we're going to talk about building a network, and I know that Steve, networking is something that is something that you really do quite a lot of. You probably do more than I do. How important is networking to your business and the development of your business?
Uh, well, it's like any method of advertising and putting yourself out there. Really, it's as important and as beneficial as what you make it, I suppose. There's various different types of networking opportunities. There's free meetings. There's ones where you pay a nominal fee to cover room hire costs, and then there's obviously the membership ones as well. That's out there, and there's a number of organisations that set up that offer that kind of service. And I've been members of all different sorts and found the quality of the work varies depending on the type of business, to be honest, John. But it's one of those things, if you don't embrace it and make the best of the opportunities that you're given in any circumstance, you're not going to get anything from it. So what you put in, you get back, sort of thing. So, I mean, there's an event that, if that's you're coming along with me to it, if I believe correctly, where it's in Harrogate,
Yes, I am going to that.
North Yorkshire. I believe it's North Yorkshire, isn't it, Harrogate? Must have moved the
Yep.
boundaries all of a sudden. This is a guy who's run a logistics company, and I'm trying to think, is it in John Bennett? Can we edit that bit out? Oh my goodness. So yeah, we're going to that, and that's going to be. I think there's about 85 exhibitors there. Last year when I went, there was hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of business owners that were walking through the door, business cards, passed back and forth sort of thing, and good contacts made. Some business came from it, but there was more contacts made than business gained. But that's not a bad thing because you've got the leverage then of keeping in front of those people using other methods to follow up, email, newsletters, etc. Dropping offers out there, connecting with them on LinkedIn and that. So it's a way of building your client database. It might be as a contact and a useful contact to have that can put you in touch with somebody as and when you know there's a click in the head. Oh, hang on a second, they're looking for this kind of service. I know somebody that does that. I met them at this meeting, connected with them on LinkedIn or wherever else it may be, or I received their newsletter. I'm going to just give them a ring and put them in touch. So like a referral sort of scenario, I guess.
Mhm.
Exhibiting is the other side of the networking, I suppose, when it's a seminar or an event as opposed to a weekly, fortnightly, or a monthly get together kind of thing. So there's different formats. But as I say, if you're not there and you're not persistent with it and you're there continuously explaining what you do and not necessarily pitching at people, but just informing them of your services and who you're looking to offer your services to, then that can pay dividend. Certainly, if you can give a name and a business organization name as well, that goes a long way. Because not everybody may know. Oh, Greg works at XYZ business. Oh well, I didn't know Greg worked there, but I know him. Or I don't know Greg, but I know that business. And I know someone else that works there, and then that's how that connection can sometimes be made. So being more specific when it comes to going to networking events helps. And I suppose listen to what the people have to say first and show an interest rather than just trying to thrust your business card over his face saying, here, this is me, this is what I do, give me a call and we'll catch up sometime and move to the next. Because some people think, well, I can't really say what I'd like to say actually on there because it wouldn't be very polite, but you kind of get the gist, someone that's just out for themselves all the time on the take. You need to get to know somebody and like them as well as a person, and then the trust element comes into it. So it's a no-like trust, isn't it? So, but I've got a lot of business from networking. I know many other people have, but it comes down to your personality. It comes down to the type of business that you're operating and what services you're looking to put out there, I guess. So you've got to plan anything you do, like pre-plan before you just turn up. Don't try and bluff your way through it, because you'll come away thinking, oh, I wish I'd have mentioned that to that person.
Yeah.
Because if you think it through in your head already and prepare, then you're more chance of actually recognizing opportunities before you get there, and hearing trigger words and questions or situations while you're there, and overhear somebody else talking. Then you might be able to interject the conversation politely, introduce yourself, and pick up the conversation and join in, and then it can lead from there, sort of thing. So I'd highly recommend networking, to be honest. If you haven't tried it, because you're nervous or you don't think there's any value in it, well, if there's all these networking events going on, there's got to be some value in it, because people just don't take time out of their busy day just to go and have a coffee and chit chat about the weather and one thing and another. So choose wisely your networking events. There are plenty out there that are proactive, but the results maybe not be as good as others. So the ones that are more structured, I suppose what I'm saying, would usually bear fruit more, I guess. So, I mean, come on, John, you must have done some networking. So what's your take on it?
I certainly have. In fact, I've run networking events, and the one thing that was a real eye opener for me was when I first started networking. I was that guy that you just talked about, who took a stack of business cards and walked up to people and went, "There's a business card. This is what I do. When can I come and see you?" And everybody went, "You
Running
can't."
out the room.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, you can't. Because the one frustration that I find with networking is that you've got a room full of people who are all trying to sell. It's never a room full of buyers. It's always a room full of salespeople. And that means that unless people know you and trust you, you're not going to get through that point of them trying to pitch to you. The worst networking meeting, the best networking meetings are a two-way conversation. You find out about everybody else, and even if you don't get any business, you might start a new project with somebody or whatever, or at least find somebody that you can recommend to somebody else. The worst of networking, as far as I'm concerned, is the fact that the worst networking groups are all salespeople trying to sell to each other, and nobody wants to listen to anybody else. So yeah, that's kind of an eye-opener, and the way that you approach any networking group can cause that to happen or not. And one thing that I learned over time was that in order to change that about the conversations I was having, I had to change my view of networking and my approach to those groups. So I stopped going in and saying, "This is who I am, this is what I do, and you should speak to me," and started going in and just asking questions and saying, "What do you do?" And, "Oh, that's interesting. What kind of, issues do you have with that?" "Well, actually, what I do might be able to help you with that." And things come out that way, and you may be able to offer some free advice to somebody who then says, "That's brilliant. What else can you do?" Very much like, well, it is relationship marketing, which is very much a buzzword for the internet, but actually it's on the internet for a reason, because it works in real life.
Yes.
And so that, to me, that was the thing. Now, like you say, there are different types of networking groups. I quite like semi-formal groups. I'm not a big fan of the very rigid, very formal processes, because to me that's not interesting, and I just get very bored very quickly, particularly when they're held at silly times of the morning, and I'm as you know, Steve, we've been to morning networking groups before, and I sort of sit there and go, I might wake up in a couple of hours. You know,
I was at one this morning, actually, at 6:30.
that you see, I mean, I know we laugh about it, but I always say, is there ever a reason to get up at 6:30 in the morning?
How will you see if I was to turn around and say I got up? I was obviously at the meeting for 6:30. I was up earlier than that, and I've come away with that would have been 2 1-to-1 meetings, and also a gentleman that's the general manager of a big hotel chain said, "I want to speak to you before you go," and we've had some discussions and. I said, "Do you do this? No. Right, put a quote in for that for us. Do you do this? No, we don't do that. You best put your quote in for that as well. What about this? We don't do that neither, so you better put your quote in for that." There was a list this long that I've now got to quote him on. I mean, granted, not everything might come off, but he says over the next 6 months, we will be using you on a monthly basis for various avenues. So, I think it was well worth getting up and having a couple of bacon butties and a few cups of tea and coffee and one thing and another. And, yes, it was like 3.5 hours out of one day of the week, but it actually finished before the day started because by 8:30, 9 o'clock, it was done and dusted. And I was taking my new car to go and get sorted out because there's a problem with it. But that's another story.
Right.
We'll not go down that road because they're actually sorting it out. This is brilliant news. So I'll maybe plug them later once it's resolved.
I mean, you're absolutely right.
But it's what you make of it, John.
It is absolutely. No, you're absolutely right, and I'm being facetious, but yeah, there are different formats, like you say, and I prefer I don't like the very formal layouts. I like the sort of the semi formal, so that you're going to get to speak to people, you're going to find out who's in the room, but you don't have that kind of sitting through the same speech every time you go, and and all that kind of thing. But again, I mean, the completely informal networking events where you turn up and you don't know who's going to be there, and everyone's stood at a bar looking like it's some sort of singles club, and
you've gone to the wrong room. That happens.
Oh no, trust me, I've been to a few networking events like that, and they're just, let's just say they weren't for me. You walk in and you know that the person you need to speak to is in there somewhere, and you always leave thinking, I've missed one person. I know they were there somewhere. So
difficult to network when there's alcohol involved. That's usually for after the. There has to be some kind of structure to network. There has to be an element of structure to any real good networking. There has to be a bit of a system. If you're going to somewhere and they say, no, there's a networking evening and there's no system, there's no kind of structure, as relaxed and as informal as it may be, there should still be a structure. If there isn't, I would say potentially, I mean, in my experience, and I mean, people might disagree with this watching the video, but in my personal experience, when I've been to one or two where there isn't a structure, it's like, come down, meet with all these other business owners, have a couple of drinks, have a chat, get to know, pass the business cards and all that. It's going to cost you 12 quid or something. And I've come away from that with a fistful of business cards that I didn't really want. Thinking I've just given about 30, 40 business cards, and I'll be very surprised if I get a phone call. And do you know what? I never got a phone call from anyone. I followed up as well. That's another thing, obviously, we talk about is the follow up. So
yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's one thing. It's funny you mentioned the business cards there, because you do see people wandering around just, here, have a business card. As soon as you say hello to somebody, have a business card, and I stopped doing that as well. And that was one of the best things I ever did. Now
I wait until about a couple of minutes into the conversation,
Yeah, exactly.
And then once you realise there's a connection or a synergy, or you're building that relationship, and you think, actually, I'd like to speak a bit longer to this person.
Absolutely.
They seem to be feeling the same.
Yeah.
Or do you feel like there's something in common we have here, or we can maybe discuss this more? If they turn around and say, absolutely, I want to discuss it more. Do you want to plan something, or do you want to have a chat? Oh, let's have a chat now. Okay, well, I'll tell you what, before I forget, that's when the business card comes out.
There you go.
So it's almost like when you're trying to close the sale or something. There's a right time and a wrong time to give a business card.
And I think, and the wrong time is either as soon as you meet them.
Yeah, there you go.
Hello, there you go. And also right at the end of the conversation. You're right. I think as soon as you realise that you've got something to talk about, Say, before I forget, there's my business card. You've got my details. There I am.
There's an
And,
interest and they'll receive it. So
and then keep talking.
Yeah.
Because then they'll associate what you're talking about with the business card. Otherwise, you're right. It just ends up in someone's hand, and they have no idea who it belongs to when they get home.
There's actually a good thing, a quick tip, while we're on the topic of business cards. It's a tip I picked up, actually, from somebody else at a networking event, and that is when you get a business card, if they're really glossy and you just can't write on them, they're a bit annoying. Because if the ones where you can actually write,
Black.
like if you don't need a Sharpie to write on them, right, then they're okay. Because what you can do is you can listen to the conversation, and if they make a comment about, oh yeah, let's meet up and have a 1-to-1. Now I can't do next week because we're taking the dog to the vets, and then we're flying out on holiday. But you're right, taking dog to vets, going on holiday to Mauritius or wherever it might be. When you have the meeting with them, or you're ringing up to confirm the meeting, it's like, hi, Steve Swift. Don't know if you remember, we met at the networking. How's the dog, first off? Or is that a touchy subject? It's an icebreaker, but then also, I just remembered the dog. Yeah, well, unfortunately, we had to have Benji put down. I'm sorry about that. Was your holiday better than the experience with the dog? Fantastic holiday, yeah. And you raise it back up again, sort of thing.
We had to cancel it because
and again, it's just those connections. People have those connections that actually that person listened and they've remembered. No, you've just made a note on a business card, but it's a great little tip. Make some notes on the business card, and then when you ring them up to make that connection with them again, you can refer back to a conversation you've had. It lowers the barriers. It gets that friendly banter going on, and you're into the conversation sort of thing. And then when you meet up with them face to face, they're sorry about the dog. Oops, choice wasn't very good there, was it? Sorry. So glad to you have a nice holiday. Forget the dog part. And then, oh yeah, absolutely, yeah, it was great. And they might even show you some holiday snaps.
Yeah.
Might.
I'm not going down that route with you. I think we both know where that one would end up.
Yeah. There's a status quo image going on there again.
Oh my word.
Oh dear. So I'll tell you what, another good thing actually, John, about networking, if people haven't realised, when you go to networking events, there's one thing that is so easy to do when you go to networking events. Have you got any idea what it might be?
Breakfast.
The breakfast. You don't like getting up that early. Lunch. An evening meal. No. There's one thing that is really easy to do that you can't usually do if you're going into a business or you're ringing them up or whatever it might be. There's one key thing that makes it a lot easier to get into businesses at networking events. Do you know what it is?
As soon as you say it, I'll know it. Go on.
You're not even going to try?
I'm not even going to guess.
Okay. It's a great way to speak directly with the decision maker, with the owner of the business. Because 9 times out of 10, the person that goes to the networking is either the business owner or somebody in power of authority that can make a decision. I.e., you're skipping all the gatekeepers, all the people that go, no, we're not interested, or they're not in at the moment. They're never in. They're on holiday. They've been on holiday for 4 years. Did they ever come back off holiday? That kind of thing. Did they get my letter?
Yeah.
Help fill the bin. Things like that. Whereas when you go to these events, 9 times out of 10, you are speaking with the person in charge.
Now that's interesting.
That's great because you can get somebody sacked, actually, if you're not careful. I don't mean it's great that you get somebody sacked. It's great that you get to meet them because then you say, oh, yeah, I tried ringing your office. It was, and if you can quote the time and the day, I spoke to such and such a person, but they said that it's not for you, sort of thing, that you don't want to save time, you want less stress, and you want to save money by actually having your advertising done properly. Well, the next, she said, I didn't want that. Yes, I flipping went away. Don't get anybody in trouble. So, does that kind of get the point across?
It does. It does. It does raise a question, which is, in your experience, the majority of businesses that are represented at the networking events that you go to, what size of business are they? As far as, are they one-man bands? Are they a few employees, 2 or 3 people?
I've got, in my contact list, I've got people that are micro businesses, people that work from home, people that have a small office within a serviced office complex. One of my clients, I'll name drop. Oh, no, I won't name drop them. They'll tell me off. Another contact I have. Let's go a different track and go with somebody else. Another contact which I have. They are with probably the UK's biggest stockbroking company in the UK. You know, literally, I think it's about £64 billion of the investments they're in charge of. Mm-hmm. Those are one of my direct contacts. I see them every fortnight for a meeting. And like you say, you then go to the SMEs and so there's a full range from one end of the spectrum to the other. And it's great to be able to tap into those resources as and when you need them, or when an opportunity arises. I think, this person I'm speaking to, I'm doing this on Friday. I'm having a meeting with an IFA, and I already know that there is a stockbroker that wants to meet with IFAs. Now, I'm having a meeting with an IFA, and during the conversation, would you like to have a conversation with your stockbroker because they're looking to contact, people such as yourself and just have a conversation, because there might be some, synergy where you can help your clients by introducing them to a stockbroker for, the £1 million investments kind of thing, which, is, I don't say that flippantly sort of thing, that's the kind of figures which those guys deal with. I'm not one of their customers yet, back to the vision book from episode ago sort of thing. But, well, yeah. But that's the kind of opportunities which I spot from having those contacts, But yeah, the decision maker is a great one for the networking side of things. Being able to speak with those face to face. Then after you've got that initial conversation out of the way and it's the appropriate time. Oh, just before I forget, sorry. Do you want one of my business cards? No, you don't say that. Allow me to pass one of your business cards to you. It's like a privilege to have my card almost. And if they go, oh, thank you very much indeed. If they don't give you one, there's one of two reasons for that. One, they don't have any. Or two, they don't really want to give you their contact details.
Yeah.
If that's the case, you've handed your card too soon.
Yeah.
Or what you've said isn't resonating with them as, I think this person can help my business. Because if they pass you a business card back, there's two reasons for that. One is they just want to make contact and it's politeness and, well, you've given me your card, I'm going to give you mine, so you've got my details, which might help me out. The second one is, I want you to have my contact details because I want you to get in touch with me because I want you to send me some information how you can help my business. So you've got to look for the signs and the signals when you're actually going to these networking events. It's not just all about going out and feeding your face and enjoying having a drink and falling out the door at the end of the night. It's looking for those signals, looking for those triggers. Yeah. And if you get stuck with the person that just won't shut up, just turn around. I've done it so many times. I've had it happen to me, to be honest. I thought the person, they asked me a question and I gave them an answer and it went on a bit long. And I learned in the early days from that. But if someone's talking hind leg off a donkey, it really is boring you and you're not actually interested in what they've got to say, then turn around and say, I don't mean to be rude, but I'm just going to go and speak with someone else because I want to try and get around as many people while I'm here. Yeah. I appreciate the time I've had with you, but I would like to go and speak with some more people as well. I've got your card. Thank you for that. Enjoy the rest of the networking, and no doubt I will bump into you before we leave today. Thanks very much indeed. Shake hands and walk off. You're doing it politely instead of just saying, do one kind of thing.
I was once in a meeting with a new product development manager for a large supermarket chain, shall we say? And I was in there as the marketer, and I was in there with a woman who was doing the sales, and she was one of these people whose mouth ran away with her, and I'll never forget this because he stopped her dead he let her go for so long, and then he suddenly leant forward and said, "Can I stop you there to ask you a question?" And she sort of went, yeah. And he said, "Do you breathe through your ears?" And that was it. That was brilliant. I just thought that was the best way to make that point ever.
That's good. I like that.
But you've just made a very important point, which I think is something that it took me a while to learn. And which I think is going to save people a lot of time, especially people who are umming and ahhing about whether or not networking is for them. So I'm going to ask you a quick question. How many contacts do you estimate you have in your contact book?
Right now, in excess of 200.
Okay. So let's be conservative and let's say 200.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So when you walk into a networking event, potentially you can introduce anybody in that room to 200 other people.
Yes.
How many people generally go to a networking event?
Between 15 and 50.
Okay. So however many people are in that room, times that by 200, that
Absolutely.
that is the network that you're tapping into by being in that room. It's got nothing to do with how many people you can sell to in the room. And this was the thing that really changed the way that I approach networking, because I no longer walk into a networking room to sell myself to the people in the room. If that happens, that's great. But I walk in to be able to say, how can I help the people in this room so that they will recommend me to their network outside of this room? Because potentially you've got, thousands of people you're connected to through that room.
Mm-hmm.
It's not about the room, it's about making sure that the people in that room like you enough to be able to say, oh, I know somebody who can give you marketing advice, or I know somebody who's been through that. I was talking to somebody about that. Where's their card? There's their number. So everything that I do now in networking event is about getting people to remember me as, like we were saying in the branding episode the other day, it's about branding yourself as the expert in your field and having people remember you in that way. That's what I was at a networking event last Monday, I think it was, and it was one of these. What people will find is there tends to be in most networking things, you get 30 seconds to stand up and tell people who you are. And of course, everybody's standing up and saying, I do this, and you should talk to me about that. And I didn't. I stood up and said, well, I'm a life coach, but I'm not going to talk to you about that today. I'm going to talk to you about something completely different. And I actually talked to them about a charity project that I'm doing for somebody else. And said, look, there's this project going on. If you can help with it, if you think you can help with it, come get in touch. I didn't talk about life coaching at all. But on the back of that, I've had people approach me about doing something for that project and then saying, oh, what was it you did again? So I can now have a longer conversation with them about that and apply it to what they do outside of the confines of that meeting.
Yes. I mean, the networking is all about that initial contact, but in order to build a relationship, that has to happen outside the room.
There's a brilliant example of what I did with that, and the reason I did that. There's a film, I don't know if you've seen it, Hitch. Will Smith, and there's a great bit in that where he's talking
Kicks
to
off the water
the
jet bike. No, not that one.
no, although that's quite funny. But he says to the guy that he's working with, your aim in this meeting is shock and awe, right? Do you remember that bit?
I do, yeah. I think it's a cracking film.
And he says something in the room, and the whole room turns and looks at him and goes, "Oh, well, that's exactly what happened when I turned around and said, I'm a life coach, but I'm not talking about that today." Because everybody else in the room is going, how am I going to sell myself? How am I going to do this? How am I going to get... I said, I'm not going to do that. And everyone just turned around and went, are you kidding? But who did they remember when they left the room?
Yeah.
The 6-foot ginger, I know, but, I mean, I'm memorable as it is, but... but it's about how are you going to present yourself?
Yeah.
And making sure that you present yourself in a way that you would want to be seen. And put yourself in the position of other people. If you know that you would respond badly to somebody standing there and going, 10 to the dozen, don't do it yourself, and practice. And slow down your conversation and practice answering questions and listening to the answers.
Absolutely. I think the other thing we move on from here to cover more about building your network is once you've attended these events, you've gathered the data, the business cards, etc. You've had that initial conversation. You may set up some one-to-one meetings, like you just pointed out, outside the room to actually
Absolutely.
cover more of the information in more detail and more relative to your own business and that of the person you're discussing with.
I think that's the reason to do networking, is to get those meetings.
And because from there you can then segregate that list, because yes, I've got in excess of 200 business contacts in my portfolio, and I've also transferred virtually them all now onto a CRM system, an online database, which allows me to newsletter them with emails or send them a direct letter through the post and one thing and another, and invite them to various places on social media like LinkedIn. But it enables me to be able to segregate that list, which means that I can select who I send what newsletter to. And I make sure that it's relevant to the discussions I've had with them, because I know that's of interest to them. If somebody is predominantly always doing newspaper articles, press releases, and sending a physical letter out to their clients or a brochure out to their clients, then they're not going to want to hear an email. They're not going to want an email from me.
No.
In the main, because I'll have asked them the question. Oh, if I send you some information, how would you prefer to receive it? By email or through the post? Oh, don't mess about with emails. I get enough junk come through. Just post it out to me. I know that person wants to physically hold some correspondence from me. They go on that list. Straight away, you split your list. One's online, one's offline.
Yeah.
And then there's one in the middle, obviously, that doesn't mind. It can have either or. And you'll need to just measure that to see which one actually interacts the greater with them. Then you make that decision on their behalf if they're not sure, because they'll tell you, unbeknown to them, that you've had a response from an email, but you didn't from the letter, or vice versa.
Yeah.
So once you've segregated your list with regards to email, physical letter, either or, you can then segregate down into business categories. Because when I do training events, it can be a case of how to increase the amount of clients you get into your dentist practice.
Yeah.
So there's no point in having a bricklayer in that group, because it's got no reference to them. It's very focused on dentistry. The same can be said for how to increase the amount of clients that come into your beauty salon. That's no good if they're an electrician.
Yeah.
And so it goes on. So you can then break your pot of contacts down into smaller subcategories, and I can then target and write an email or a letter, depending on which they prefer to receive, that's tailored to their business sector. So there's more relevance to it. And this is how you can nurture that network that you've been building. It's not just a case of, I've got all these contacts, I'm going to send everybody an email, because a lot of them will just go, do you know what? I'm getting sick of this person sending me these emails about how to get more customers into my beauty salon when I own an accountancy practice.
Yeah.
Now, they may have somebody on their books that they do their monthly accounts, bookkeeping and annual year-end accounts, etc., that owns a beauty salon that might say, oh,
yeah,
we've had a conversation with them and they were interested in doing it. I tell you what I'm going to do is I'm just going to forward them that email and put a quick "for your information" FYI at the top, and see what goes from there. But the chances are they'll just get bored of it or sick of it and unsubscribe. And once they unsubscribe, obviously the communication link has broken down. And trying to get that open again, when you ring them, I sent you I just noticed that it's not coming through to you anymore. There's a reason for that. Yeah, you're boring the pants off me. Everything you send me is not relevant to everything that you send me is not relevant to my business. That's why I've got sick of receiving your emails. If you've got anything of interest for me, then fine. Not just throw down my throat what you want me to hear. Did you not listen at the meeting we had? I'm interested in this and this only, and you're sending me all this other garbage. So, make sure you make those notes on the business cards I said earlier on in this video, and then segregate it down. Ask the question: do you like getting emails, or do you prefer to get a letter through the post? Yeah. Oh, either or, great. On the business card, email, newsletter, email or post, just so you know which one to do it, and then you do your filtering in your CRM system, and then you can work your pipeline from it being prospect, and off you go. And plus, it's saving people money that way as well, because every time you send out something through the post or an email, either or, there is a cost implication. So you're wasting money if you're sending somebody a letter that wants an email, and vice versa. Obviously, emails are far cheaper than something through the post. On the send value, i.e., a stamp, or when you actually send the email, the creative side of it, depending on which company you're using, obviously, it can vary slightly to greatly. It depends on how much. If you're sending a 24-page letter, booklet sort of thing out, then obviously that's going to be more expensive than just having somebody create a single email template. So, I feel like I'm waffling on. Do you want to say something?
No, I think that was very valuable, and actually it's brought up a subject that I think we can cover in a future topic as well, which is about email lists and how to put those together and how to make sure that you give value to people through those as well. So as far as networking goes, I think there are different reasons and different reasons really why people go to networking events. Obviously, the whole reason for going to a networking event is because you would hope.
Just fell off the edge of my desk, sorry.
Oh, that's right.
My elbow on the desk and the desk wasn't there.
That would have been quite funny, actually. Yeah. Still, it gave me a bit of thinking time.
Glad I could be of assistance, John.
I like what you did there.
Doing it again.
No, I think obviously the bottom line is that the whole point of going to a networking event is it's part of your marketing. It's part of your marketing budget, which means that you need to see some kind of return on investment. And before you start going to these networking events, you need to decide to yourself what that return on investment needs to be and what percentage of your marketing is going to be done that way. Because there are direct costs and indirect costs to networking events. Obviously, the direct cost is your membership fee, if there's a membership fee, your guest fee, if there's a guest fee, and always take the guests' spots for as long as you can and try them out before you join. But also there's the indirect cost of your time. And so you need to make sure that you know in your own mind when it becomes viable and when it becomes not viable to be in a certain group, because certainly in my experience, different networking groups attract different types of people. And I've been to networking groups who are full of my client base, and I've been to other networking groups that absolutely are not my client base. So you need to be very, very sure about who it is you're looking for as a client, because like we talked about way back in 1853 when we did the first couple of episodes, if you don't know who your prospective client is, you can't market to them effectively. And that's what this is. This is about, it's presenting yourself and your company in person, which really is what business is all about.
I mean, there are certain, I think, principles when using networking, whether it's a face-to-face networking event or it's a social networking on a website. There is, like, I'd say there's probably 10 essential principles when you go to networking. Do you have any idea what the principles are, John? Because if you are, then throw them in there and I'll throw mine in, and then people will get more than 10.
Sounds good to me. I mean, for me, the first principle is not to go in selling. The first principle is to have the mindset of how can I help everyone in the room. That would be my first principle. And to just take a step back, because everybody who walks into a networking room is in your face and this is what we need to do, and we're fantastic, we're the ones you should speak to. If you're going to differentiate yourself from the rest of the room, take the first 10 minutes, hopefully with a lot of them, that's the breakfast time anyway, you can see the way people are interacting and you can decide to yourself, this is how I'm going to differentiate myself. But above all, principle number one for me is Obviously, don't bore them. But principle number one for me is make sure that you've got that mindset of how can I help.
I think I'd go with. I mean, they're all going to be right, I'm sure. But I suppose one that I would be to be different, and by that I mean differentiate yourself, aim
Yeah.
high, but
Yeah.
be the best at something.
Yeah.
Because then, if you start the conversation off when asked, "Oh, who are you and what do you do?" Well, usually you have name badges anyway at these events.
Yeah.
So and usually people do that sort of thing when they go, "Oh, hi, oh, Steve, yes." It's like, yeah. Yes, my name's Steve. How do you do? So what do you do, Steve? And then you go not into a pitch, like you said, not into sales, just into aim high. I am the best at this.
Yeah.
There's other things, but I'm the best at this. So
Absolutely.
mine would be, I'm brilliant at reducing stress, wasted time, and wasted money for business owners.
Yeah.
Really? How'd you do that? They're asking me a question. That's pulling marketing straight away, which
Absolutely.
is the best kind of thing. So, and then you just carry on conversation. Well, obviously there's lots that I could talk to you about, and obviously we're trying to get around and work the room as best possible. Is there any chance we could maybe meet up and have a one-to-one?
Yeah.
Would you be up for that? Yeah, absolutely. Let me just pass you one of my cards if you don't mind. Do you have one as well? Oh yeah, please have one of my cards. Great.
Yeah.
And then get ready to jot those little tips that I mentioned earlier on about, have they got a dog that's on its last legs? Are they going on holiday somewhere? And one thing and another. Then you can, when you have that initial conversation to book the appointment to have the one-to-one, and even when you meet them again face to face, you've got those icebreakers all ready to go.
Yeah.
So that's where I'd go. What do you maybe have for your next one, John?
Yeah, I think again that's another good one. I think if there's one of the things that I always do is I try and find out straight away. I make a beeline for the sign-in list. That's the first thing I do. As soon as I get
Picture
there,
it on your phone. You're done.
absolutely.
You're out there.
And I go through, and there's usually maybe about 5 people in the room that I know I'm going to want to speak to. And I'm looking out for people that I think are going to be my client base. And I'm very clear on what my client base is. But I'm also looking for people who have got similar job descriptions to me. Okay, so if I walk into a networking event, for example, I might be looking for I should explain before I say this, mind you, that I'm not going into the room to sell to the people in the room. When I attend a networking event, my priority, and this is another tip actually, so this can be my number 2. My priority when I go to a networking event is not to sell to the people in the room. I'm looking for people that I've got a synergy with so that I can sell to their client base. Because I work on the principle that I told you earlier on, which was everybody in the room's got a network outside of this room, and they're the people who are going to be my client base. A lot of what I do is obviously I do these calls with you because part of what I do is aimed at small businesses, and I'm a specialist in working with small business owners. But the other part of that is I go to networking events and say, well, whose clients are the same clients as mine? Because if I'm looking to expand my client base and find more small business owners, what services are they already using? Well, okay, there's a large part of my client base is female. So there might be a beautician that works in a certain area of the country that's well known for its entrepreneurial females. As an example, it sounds a little bit out there, but trust me, these things exist and you can find this information out if you look. So I would say, I probably need to speak to that beautician then. And then that conversation is not, I want to coach you so that you can get more clients for your beautician. It's, how can we do something so that you can advertise me to your clients? And that's always my priority in networking events. It's not to sell to the people in there. It happens, obviously it happens. But my main priority is to find people that share the same client base so that we can come up with something mutually, because I like working with other people on different projects. Make sense?
Yeah, absolutely makes sense.
So,
Yeah.
so that is my number two, is be absolutely clear about your priority for being there. Are you there to sell to the people in the room, or are you there to find out more about them and hopefully build a joint venture with them effectively? And then make a beeline. The first thing you do, make a beeline for that sign-in list, and don't just sign your name. Look through it and go, they're the 5 people I need to speak to, and that's somebody who's similar to me who I probably need to find out more about. Because particularly, not so much in marketing and marketing consultancy, but particularly in coaching, what you find is a lot of coaches are not that great at pushing themselves forward. So you'll go to a networking event and there'll be maybe 3 or 4 coaches with different job titles, all trying to get in the room, and you've never heard of them before because they don't really market themselves. You know, very few coaches. You know, I mean, I tend to try and get myself in the paper or tell people about what I do. I do networking, although I like, as we've said, I don't like getting up in the morning, but I do it. Coaches tend not to be that proactive. So when you find one, it's interesting I always make a beeline and say, oh, what do you do? What makes me different to them? Because there's always something, and actually because of the way I work, there's usually something. But so that's my number 2. Very waffly, but it's my number
2. Well, for my second one, I can't bring myself to say it. My second one, I would say that be concise and impressive, not clever and big-headed.
Was that my answer that made you? God, he's going on a bit. I think I'll make my next one be concise. Yeah.
Yeah,
I should explain to people, by the way, that that last week was a bit of a train wreck as far as corpsing goes, and we had to edit it very, very heavily. So we're both sat here trying desperately not to laugh and be extremely serious this week, and we're sort of managing it.
I think so. We will eventually, at one day or another,
we will get
an outtake reel, because it'll be all right on the night. This could last a month. That's got to be a ticket event, though, was that, John? But yes, be concise and impressive. Yep. It's almost like an elevator pitch scenario when you're describing yourself, but don't do it to be big-headed and cocky and clever, because that can really rub people the wrong way. I mean, the networking event I was at this morning was hilarious. I mean, they asked me to do the moderating, like the chairing of it kind of thing, and basically I was explaining about one of the members in the room, and it was a case of just to touch base on what that one member's just said to the guests in the room and the other members, was that I can certainly, part of what they do is they do like training workshops to do with DIY, because in like the building industry, etc. But they also not only just do that, but they also do DIY training courses to show people how to do a bit of plastering, a bit of bricklaying, and one thing or another. But I also know this guy's dad does carpentry.
Right.
And I says, I take it your dad still does this, doesn't he? And the chap says, yeah, that's right. I says, just so there's a bit of credibility going on here, would you mind just saying the kind of people or the works that your dad's actually done, that people can get trained? And I've seen some of the work this guy's dad's done, and it's phenomenal. I says, so why don't you tell the rest of the people in the room, who your dad's done some work for? And do you know what the first person he said that his dad had done some work for?
Go on.
The Queen.
Oh,
it was just. That was
amazing.
It. It was dumb. You don't think somebody that is commissioned to do work directly for the Queen of the United Kingdom is credible. Is credible. The credibility isn't high enough with that. Then it was like, forget it. But then he went on to say, oh, and they've also, when they were redoing the York Minster, all the wooden bosses on there, he designed and he crafted and sculptured those and supplied those as well. And he's done a few bits of it. I said, no, it doesn't matter. You did the best first. You should have left that to the last, Just going to nip and do a quote for the Palace. I mean, it doesn't happen every day, does it? So, and that was about the credibility side of it for him. But he wasn't doing it to be bragging or one thing or another. It just came out that way. It's like, well, okay, you've asked. First thing that comes to mind, so, I've got.
Well, the other thing as well is if you're at a networking event for the first time, if you're in a room for the first time, you don't actually know who the other people are necessarily. I mean, I was at one with yourself some time ago, and there was another coach in the room, and we were doing the going round the room thing, and this guy was, I think he was 2 seats to my right or something, and we were going that way round, and he stood up, and he'd never been before, and he stood up and said, I'm a coach and I do this, that, and the other, and nobody else does it. And I was 2 seats down from him thinking, well, I do that. So when I stood up, I just said, I do what he does. but he'd taken 30 seconds to say that he was the only person in the room who did it, and I stood up and said, no, he's not. And that's all I had to say. But of course, who would want to speak to him after that? Because he just lied to the room.
Yeah, I was going to say it was.
You've got to be very careful about making assumptions about the rest of the room. In fact, this is going to be my next one. Go in and make no assumptions at all. because if you do, you'll vocalize them and you'll end up looking like an idiot. And especially in the first couple of times you go there, people don't know who you are. They're trying to decide whether to trust you or not, and they'll look for any reason. It's very much like any other social situation. People walk into social situations not thinking, have I got a reason to like this person? They go in thinking, what are all the reasons why I don't like this person? So you have to think of that before you go in and say, what are the possible objections people could have to my personality, because they will judge you on that, and to my offering. And take as long as you need to go through that and then say, okay, well, these are the possible objections. These are what I can do about it. So that when you go in, you're not putting your foot in it, and you're removing those barriers. It's about removing the barriers to trust. For me, that's what networking's about. Because cold calling, as everybody knows, doesn't work anymore. You can't do that anymore. You have to have a reason to contact people, and if you've met them already, there's your reason. But if they've gone away thinking, well, he was a bit of a prat, when you contact them again, they're going to go, yeah, fob him off.
Yeah, absolutely.
So there you go. That was my number 4, number 3, whatever.
But you're one in front of me.
Well, Steve, I wasn't going to say anything, obviously, but
I was very sharp. I think that was your number 3, wasn't it?
I think it was. Yes.
It was, because I couldn't bring myself to say what mine was after following you last time.
That's right. Yes.
So, yeah. So my third contribution to this episode about building your network, for those that maybe have forgotten. Well, I've been trying to think which way around I could do this, because I think you've kind of like touched on part of it, which is know who you want to go and speak to at these things. And it's like the planning your networking. So your plans and your aims as well. So know what you want, but don't go there to sell.
Yeah.
So certainly if you go into a well-structured networking event that publicizes the list of other people that's going to be there, and that makes the job far easier, because you can plan the event more and go, right, there's going to be 50 people in the room, but out of those 50 people, I only want to speak with these 5. Speak to anybody else while I'm there, fine, but I want to make sure I have spoke with those 5 to see whether or not there can be a bit of a relationship start to be built or not.
Yeah.
And once you've done the 5 you need to, then spend the rest of your time there, mingling around, having some conversations. I did it when I went to It was an event as opposed to a networking, really. And I thought, I nearly didn't go actually. The 11th, for some reason, I just looked on the internet, found an event to go to. It was about 6 months later down the line, put it in, diarised to go there. Before I set off, I woke up in the morning, got the suit out, started to get myself ready, and thought, I don't know if I can be bothered to go to this. Why am I going to this? And I actually asked myself, why on earth do I want to spend my time travelling all the way to this event?
Yeah.
And then I stopped and I just thought, hang on a second. For some reason, at the time of you seeing this, you decided to put your name down that you were going. There was obviously something at that moment that you thought, I need to go and have a look just to see who else is there, if nothing else, to see who is doing these kind of events in this area of the UK. So I could basically do some research, really. And then it ended up turning out I met somebody, excuse me, got talking to them, and then I ended up going to a well-structured, very well-structured, very well represented and attended networking event. And I made some great contacts there. Some business was done, and I contributed, quite well, I feel, that I did throughout the time when I went to this networking event. So if you're not sure if you should go or not, make sure you plan a reason for, this is why I've put my name down, I've booked to go on it. Plan what you're going to look to achieve and what your aim is for attending there. Is it just to go around and just pester as many people as possible so they take your business card? If that's your aim, don't go.
Yeah.
Because you'll upset a lot of people.
That's right.
You'll not gain many friends. But if your aim is to find out if there's anybody attending there that can help your business, back to the one you were saying, and you can help them, then that's a great aim. The fact you're getting their contact details, you just don't know where that leads on to. Again, this bleeds over to something you said, John, which is it's not necessarily that person that you meet face to face at that event. It's their contacts. So I think the preparation side of things, of planning what you're going to do and what you want to get out of it, would be my number 3.
Brilliant. Okay, well, my next one is follow-up. Because see, there are advantages of going second, but sometimes you could box yourself into a corner.
Leave it there. People are getting a flavour for our 5 minutes before we start recording.
Saying nothing.
Mm-hmm.
We've already dealt with the fact that you don't wear any trousers.
I believe you brought that one back up again. Moving on.
You'll never forget that one, I tell you.
You're number 4. Come on, time's ticking. People are getting bored.
Follow up. So yeah, follow up is my next one, and again, this was something that I learned was people don't generally follow up from these things. Particularly some networking groups, they'll give you a full list of all of the attendees. So one of the things I'll do, even the people that I haven't spoken to, I'll ring them all up. During the following week, I'll ring them all up and say, look, it was great to speak to you, or sorry, didn't get to speak to you. And just see what comes of it. Maybe something will, maybe something won't. And actually, the same thing. The same thing with LinkedIn. Actually, when people use LinkedIn, I do the same thing. Get in touch with people and say, we've connected through LinkedIn. I don't really know that much about what you do. How about a 5-minute conversation? Here's my phone number. What time can I ring you? And something may come out of it, something may not. But we're just about on the hour, Steve.
Oh, right, okay.
Conscious of time. So I think we've done 5 each there, because I think you did 2 your last time. If you want to do your last one, go for it, and then we'll.
A very quick one then, John, if you don't mind. Is be positive. Be a positive influence in the room. It gives a lasting impression. There's nothing worse than speaking very quietly, head down, and not really, involving yourself in the actual ambience of the room and the rest of the people there. So head up, nice smile, even if it's the person that's the party bore sort of thing. Don't be afraid to turn around and tell them that you think they're boring and that politely I'm going to walk away. So you either keep talking to yourself or you find someone else to try and pick on. So be positive when you're there. Be a positive influence, I think, would be something I would suggest, because it leaves a lasting impression in people's minds, and they're more likely to go, wow, it was nice being that guy. It wasn't lasted very long, but I would like to have another, one-to-one with that person, where there's a bit more time and we can really get to know each other's business a bit more and see how we can help each other.
Yeah.
Then that's the last one I'd like to throw in there, if you don't mind.
That's absolutely fantastic. One thing that I will say is, obviously, it's a very busy week, and my website is relaunching. And being as we're talking about networking, I'm going to throw in that if people go to the website there and put their email address in, there is an hour-long networking presentation which I delivered to a networking group a few weeks ago, which is available for download. So if you go to the website and put your email address in, you'll get an email link to that straight back.
Fantastic.
Other than that, anything you want to tell people about, Steve, while we're here? Obviously, we've got the seminar coming up in the next week as well, which I think we're both looking forward to.
Yes, if people want to find out, it's superchargeyoursuccess.com is the domain name to go to. That's superchargeyoursuccess.com, and all the event details, absolutely, all the event details and all that. Something else we talked about before we started recording. Yes, crazy pranks that fail. But there we go.
Or not.
Yeah, Google it. I think next week's topic, yes. Success costs money, or does it?
Or does it?
Kind of like
what
touched
you
on.
Did there.
Yes, you see. I mean, obviously, we've talked about networking, and some can be low cost, medium, and high ticket. That's just one avenue to create success, i.e. building up your contact list and building up that rapport, that know, like, trust, and then leading on to potential opportunities. So we'll look, I think, next episode, John, which will be episode 9, about success costs money, ?
Fantastic. Excellent. Well,
I think we're about done.
That just leaves me to say thank you very much for watching and taking the time to spend with us. And thanks very much, Steve. And I'll speak to you next week.
Absolutely. Don't forget, comments, please, everybody. Let's hear from you. And why not share some of these videos if you think they're worth a share?
Fantastic.
Take care. See you next week.
Bye-bye.